Sony's track record with home consoles is commendable. Since their early days with the original PlayStation to now with their dominance in the market with the PS4, they've never made a console that didn't have an excellent library or didn't sell a ton. Keeping that in mind, it's no surprise that people are excited to see what Sony will have in store for us with the PS5. Of course, that's still a ways away from release yet. No one really expects it to launch within the next 2 or 3 years at the very least. But even still, we've got our own wish list of features we want Sony to implement in the PS5. Without further ado, let's start right away. Better CPU and GPU. There's always been a bit of a gap between the capabilities of a console and those of a PC, but over the last few years with the advent of mid-cycle upgrades such as the PS4 Pro and, to a larger extent, the Xbox One X, that gap has become a little smaller. Of course, that's not to say the two are on an equal footing. Not even close, actually. But console gamers can now expect specifications that can at least match mid-range PCs. With the PS5, though, we expect Sony to make further improvements. Higher resolutions and frame rates have become more of a demand than a luxury over the last few years, and we're hoping Sony's next console will have specifications that are good enough to match those expectations. A more impressive CPU and GPU are, in fact, must-haves. Bigger standard hard drives. As physical games continue diminishing in popularity and importance, with people preferring to download and purchase their games digitally more and more with each passing year, so too does the demand for larger standard built-in hard drives continue to grow. 500GB and 1TB consoles work just fine, for the most part, but we expect Sony and others to make some significant improvements when the next generation of home consoles rolls around. With consoles becoming hubs for multimedia activity, among other things, larger standard hard drives will be required for so much more than just storing games and their save content. Standard 4K resolution. Ask anyone what tops their wish list for next-gen consoles, and chances are they'll mention a higher, much better resolution. 4K has been growing in popularity for some time now, and though it's not yet the current standard, it almost definitely will be within the next few years. As such, we expect the PS5 to have a standard 4K resolution, and really, it's quite likely that it will. The PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X have taken big steps towards 4K, and their respective successors are surely going to follow suit. Better VR capabilities. It's fair to say that VR hasn't taken off the way Sony, or anybody for that matter, wanted it to. That said, over the last couple of years, we've seen the technology grow bit by bit, with more games coming out to showcase just what VR is capable of. Do we expect it to be the primary way to play games? Well, no, of course not. But we do expect it to grow even more. Hopefully, Sony will integrate VR with the PS5 better and make more efforts to capitalize on the technology. On the flip side, we also hope that they don't integrate it as fully as Microsoft tried to do with the Kinect and the Xbox One at the beginning of the current generation. Just find a middle ground. Wireless charging for controllers. The DualShock 4 is an excellent controller, but for all of its strengths, having to charge it every now and again is a pain, more so than anything else because of the fact that you have to connect it to the PS4 itself with a wire. Of course, there's going to be plenty of improvements made to the controller when the PS5 rolls around, but the one we want to see more than any other, perhaps, is wireless charging. Crossplay. Just as it is with backwards compatibility, Sony's stance on crossplay has been frustratingly backwards and regressive this generation, and it seems even more so when you look at how open Microsoft and Nintendo have been to it. Games like Fortnite and Rocket League have really benefited from crossplay, just to name a few, while PS4 owners have had to make do without. Hopefully, by the time the PS5 launches, Sony will have taken the overwhelming demand for crossplay into account. Bigger RAM. A console's onboard memory is perhaps one of its most important components, and Sony needs to get it perfectly right with the PS5. Having a RAM that can support not only native 4K resolution, but also other multimedia functionalities is an absolute must. Developers have been maxing out the PS4's onboard memory not long after it launched, so we're hoping the PS5 will see a significant boost. Free online multiplayer. Okay, this one is obviously a pipe dream, but this is a wish list after all and not a predictions list. The industry frowned at Microsoft when they made online multiplayer locked behind payments with the Xbox 360 more than a decade ago and lauded Sony for making it free with the PS3. But as this current generation began, free online multiplayer became a thing of the past. Both the PS4 and the Xbox One require players to pay a subscription fee if they want to play online. And while both consoles have added multiple benefits and features to make it easier to swallow that subscription fee, we wish at least the playing games online part would be free of charge. Better network features. Of course, if Sony is going to insist on having their online features locked behind a subscription fee, they're going to have to make sure it's worth it. Microsoft recently wowed one and all with their announcement for their Netflix-like Games Pass service, which is exactly the kind of service almost no one would mind paying for. We don't expect Sony to do the exact same thing, though they very well might do so depending on how well Game Pass does. But we do expect them to make PSN a more beefy, more full-featured service. It's not bad right now, but we hope to see some significant improvements with the PS5. Activity log. Activity logs are far from being fundamental features for a console or a handheld. It's not like a system would be crippled without one, which is evidenced by how few systems have had them. Other than the 3DS and to a much lesser extent the Switch, there have hardly been any high-profile major consoles or handhelds that have implemented an activity log. But we really do hope the PS5 will have one. Having the option to check up to see how much time you've spent playing each and every game and every other app on your console isn't something that enhances or deteriorates your experience in any meaningful way, but it's always nice to have that option. Faster installs. Digital platforms such as PSN and Xbox Live have become increasingly important for consoles, and with digital purchases of games beginning to take precedence over physical ones, that importance increases even more so. But having to wait for the game to download and install before you can play it can be a serious pain. A lot of it depends on what kind of internet connection you have, of course, but a system's specifications have a lot to do with how quickly it installs games. Here's hoping install times on the PS5 will be greatly improved over the PS4. Customizable UI. When we say we want the PS5 to have a customizable UI, we obviously don't mean we want it to be on the same footing as, say, a Linux OS, but at least some degree of customization is much needed. Simple actions such as creating folders are possible on the PS4, but really it doesn't go much beyond that. Having greater and deeper tools to further customize the system's UI to suit every player's needs will go a long ways towards making the inevitable PS5 that much more user-friendly. And that about does it for this video. You can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.